My sister demanded I be her surrogate, then faked an application. Now she's pregnant, but the shocking truth changed everything. I never expected to share this on Reddit, but life has a way of surprising you. I'm Sarah 28th, and my life turned upside down around 6 months ago. It all began when my sister Angelina 3012 revealed her pregnancy. Angelina and I have always had a difficult connection. We grew up 4 years apart. Angelina was always the ideal child and all, a student, the leader of the debate team, and first chair violin in the school orchestra. In contrast, I was a more free-spirited individual. I fared well in school, but I was more interested in computers and programming. Our parents, particularly our mother, always seemed to prefer Angelina. They would attend all of her recitals and debates, but they were sometimes unable to attend my coding competitions. This caused a schism between us that only widened as we grew older. When Angelina met Tom 34 in college, it appeared that her ideal life was complete. They married shortly after college, and everyone expected them to begin a family immediately. But years passed, and no baby arrived. Angelina never said much about it, but I could see it bothered her. Meanwhile, I concentrated on my career. I became a software developer, got a terrific job at a tech firm, and purchased my own apartment. I was content with my life, so when Angelina announced her pregnancy, I was ecstatic for her. I hoped this would finally bring us closer as sisters. But then Angelina dropped the bombshell. I was going to be the surrogate mother, not asked, but told. I was shocked. Angelina and I were not close enough for her to believe I would do something like this. We only communicated once a month, and it was generally just to catch up on the basics. So for her to simply believe I'd carry her baby was mind-boggling. When I tried to tell her I was uncomfortable with the notion, she dismissed it. "Oh, come on, Sarah," she said. "It's not a big deal. You're not using your uterus right now anyway." I couldn't believe what I heard. Not using my uterus. Was she serious? I tried to explain that becoming a surrogate was a big decision that would impact my body, employment, and life for at least 9 months, but Angelina would not listen. She continued saying how she and Tom had been trying for so long, how this was their final opportunity, and how I was being selfish by not wanting to help. Things worsened when our parents became involved. Mom 56 and Dad 58 agreed with Angelina as usual. They began phoning me every day, reminding me how important family is and that I should be willing to do everything for my sister. Dad went further. "Sarah, this is your chance to finally do something meaningful with your life." That hurt. I have a fantastic career, my own house, and a life I'm proud of, but none of that matters now since I refused to be an incubator for my sister. It felt like I was back in high school, constantly compared to Angelina and left lacking. The pressure continued to increase. Angelina began telling her extended family and acquaintances about her wonderful sister who would be her surrogate. She even mentioned it on Facebook before I committed to anything. Suddenly I began receiving letters from relatives, uncles, and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all congratulating me for my selflessness. I attempted to correct the record, but Angelina had already spun her story. Anyone I told the truth to either didn't believe me or thought I was overly theatrical. "It's just 9 months," they'd say. "Don't you want your sister to be happy?" But it was more than just 9 months. It was my body, profession, and life. I had recently been promoted to lead developer on a significant project at work. How was I meant to handle it while pregnant? What about the health hazards and possible long-term repercussions on my body? Nobody appeared to care about any of this. The final straw came at a family supper. Angelina had asked everyone around to celebrate her imminent surrogacy. I hadn't agreed to anything, but she pretended it was a done deal. As we sat around the table, she began discussing her nursery ideas and her excitement for me to begin hormone therapy. I could not handle it anymore. I stood up and told them the truth. I stated that I had never consented to be a surrogate, that Angelina had lied to everyone, and that I was tired of being bullied and guilted into doing something I did not want to do. The room became quiet, then all hell broke loose. Angelina erupted into sobs, claiming that I was spoiling her one opportunity at parenthood. Mom and Dad began yelling at me, calling me selfish and callous. Tom merely sat there looking uneasy. I left the dinner feeling wild. Was I actually the bad guy here? Was I being selfish by refusing to give up my body and life? I didn't think so, but my family appeared to think differently. Since that night, things have been strained. Angelina isn't speaking with me. Mom and Dad keep sending guilt-inducing voicemail messages. And even some of my friends have been strange about it, saying things like, well, if it was my sister, I'd do it. I'm standing my ground, but it's tough. I feel like I'm losing my family over this, but I also can't believe they're putting so much pressure on me. It's my body, so I get to choose, right? The whole issue has brought back a lot of childhood memories, the continual comparison to Angelina, the sensation that nothing I do is ever good enough for my parents. I thought I'd moved on from that, but the surrogacy turmoil has brought it all back to the surface. I tried talking to Angelina one-on-one in the hopes that she would comprehend my point of view, but she refused to listen. She repeatedly says, "You've always been selfish, and you've never cared about anyone but yourself." It's as if she is rewriting our entire history to fit this narrative in which I'm the terrible person. Tom has been strangely quiet during this affair. When I tried to talk to him about it, he simply said it was between Angelina and me. But shouldn't he have a say over who bears his child? His lack of involvement has me skeptical, but I can't put my finger on why. I do not know what to do. Part of me wants to yield just to end the drama, but I know that is not the appropriate motivation to become a surrogate. Another part of me wants to cut ties with everyone and start over somewhere else. I've been considering shifting to my company's office in another city just to get away from it all. But is running away truly the solution? And what if Angelina tries to carry out this surrogacy plan with someone else? Should I warn them? I suppose I'm writing this to test whether I'm nuts. Am I wrong for refusing to be my sister's surrogate? How do I deal with this circumstance without losing my family completely? Any help would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in family drama with no way out. Update: it has been 3 weeks since my last article, and the issue has become even more convoluted. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left comments on my first post. Your encouragement and guidance made me feel less insane about the entire thing. I took your advice to heart and chose to stand my ground. I told my family that I would not be a surrogate no matter how hard they pressed me. For a while, things were too calm. Last week, I received a call from a number I did not know. When I replied, it was a woman claiming to represent a surrogacy agency. She began discussing how they had received my application and were eager to move on with the process. I was confused at first, then frightened when I realized what had happened. Angelina had filed a surrogacy application in my name. She had taken my personal information, forged my signature, and even submitted medical records that she had obtained in some way. I was furious. This wasn't simply crossing a boundary, it was identity theft. I immediately called the agency back and explained the situation. They were understanding but suggested that I make a police report to protect myself. I was torn. Filing a police report might land Angelina in significant legal danger. At the same time, she committed an illegal act and violated my privacy severely. I recalled all the instances in our youth when Angelina got away with something because I didn't want to get her in trouble, like when she shattered Mom's favorite vase and blamed it on me, or when she stole my car in college and got into an accident. After much thinking, I decided to submit the report. It was not an easy decision, but I felt compelled to protect myself. What if Angelina did something like this again? The fallout was swift and severe. Angelina called me, shouting that I was attempting to ruin her life. Mom and Dad were outraged, telling me that I was ripping the family apart. Even Tom, who had generally been silent throughout the episode, left me a few guilt-inducing voicemails. But this is where things become even more difficult. Remember how I mentioned that Angelina and Tom had been trying to have a baby for years? Well, there's a reason behind that. A common buddy contacted me after hearing about the police report. She told me something I didn't know: Tom had a vasectomy years before he met Angelina. This discovery hit me hard, not only because it meant Angelina had been lying about their fertility issues, but also because it reminded me of when Angelina and Tom initially started dating years earlier. I overheard a chat between them at a family cookout. Tom had mentioned that he did not want children, and Angelina concurred, stating she was also unsure about motherhood. I hadn't given it much attention at the time, but it suddenly felt significant. Tom apparently did not desire children. He told Angelina this when they first started dating, and she stated she was fine with it. However, as the years passed, Angelina became enamored with the prospect of having a baby. She began pressing Tom, who eventually agreed to consider adoption or surrogacy to make her happy. This new information led me to doubt everything. Why was Angelina so desperate for a baby when she had previously been content with not having children? And why go to such measures to make me a surrogate when you could simply adopt or locate a willing surrogate through normal channels? I wasn't sure what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to face Angelina and reveal all her falsehoods, but another part of me felt bad for her. Was she so desperate for a baby that she would engage in such deception? In the end, I opted to speak with Tom first. I met him for coffee and told him everything, including Angelina's falsehoods, the surrogacy push, and what a mutual acquaintance had told me. Tom was shocked. He stated that he had agreed to Angelina's surrogacy plan because he felt it would make her happy, but he was unaware of the magnitude of her deception. As we talked, Tom opened up about his own marital troubles. He admitted that he and Angelina had been having issues for years, primarily due to their disagreement about having children. He stated he had pondered leaving several times, but stayed because he loved Angelina and hoped she would change her mind about having children. Tom seemed shocked as he exited our meeting. I felt awful for him, but also relieved that the truth was finally being revealed. I wondered whether this would be the push he needed to finally confront Angelina and possibly end their marriage. As for Angelina and my parents, I'm still unsure how to continue. The police are investigating the identity theft, and I'm concerned about what will happen to Angelina. Despite everything, she is still my sister. I keep remembering back to our youth. It's difficult to reconcile those recollections with who Angelina has become. Mom and Dad are still not speaking with me. They believe I'm making things up to get out of being a surrogate. It aches, but I'm trying to be tough. I've begun seeing a therapist to help me cope with the stress and complex feelings that this scenario has brought up. I'm seriously considering moving out of state for a while to get away from all the turmoil. My employer has an office in another city, and I'm considering requesting a transfer. The prospect of a fresh start is appealing, but I'm also concerned about running away from my troubles. So that's where things are now. My family is in tatters, my sister may be in legal problems, and I'm considering starting anew in a different city. I didn't expect to be where I am now a month ago, but that is life. I'll keep everyone updated on what occurs next. Thank you again for all of your help. It means more than you realize. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my previous update, and just as I thought things couldn't be any more complicated, life threw me another curveball. First, let me catch you up on what has been happening. Angelina was charged with fraud following the identity theft incident. It was a misdemeanor, but she had to pay a fine and complete community service. Tom filed for divorce, unable to overcome Angelina's falsehoods about desiring children and the entire surrogacy disaster. I did, in fact, accept that transfer. I've been living in a different place for the past month. It's been challenging but also refreshing. I've found some new acquaintances, put myself into work, and even begun seeing a therapist to deal with the stress of the last several months. But this is when things take a surprising turn. My mom called me last week. My parents had not spoken to me since the police report, so I was startled to hear from her. I almost did not respond, but something told me I should. When I picked up, my mother was in tears. She managed to tell me about Angelina's pregnancy despite her cries. Naturally, I was perplexed. How could Angelina be pregnant if Tom had a vasectomy and they were getting divorced? Well, it turns out that the baby is not Tom's, it isn't even biologically Angelina's. My mother eventually revealed the truth. Angelina had been lying about everything since the beginning. Angelina is not infertile. She never has been. The entire trying for years story was a pure lie. She wanted me to be a surrogate because she didn't want to go through the pregnancy herself. Apparently, Angelina has always been afraid of pregnancy and childbirth. This concern derives from a horrific occurrence she experienced as a teenager that I was unaware of. When Angelina was 16, she witnessed our cousin's difficult pregnancy and near-fatal birth. It had a lasting impression on her, instilling a strong fear of pregnancy. But Angelina too desperately wanted a baby, or so she thought. When Tom told her he didn't want children, she saw it as an ideal chance to play the needy and fertile wife and coerce someone else me into carrying a baby for her. But when her plan with me fell through, she panicked. She began seeing this person behind Tom's back. Let us call him Mike. Mike got her pregnant, and now Angelina is suddenly confronted with the same situation. I was speechless. All of our family's drama and pain sprang from Angelina's fear of being pregnant. It seemed too ludicrous to be true, but as my mother talked, more truths emerged. My parents stated that they had been aware of Angelina's pregnancy fear for many years. They agreed to her surrogacy idea because they believed it would help her overcome her fear. They never considered how it would affect me, or how wrong it was to coerce someone into becoming a surrogate. I felt a mixture of emotions: rage at the deception, relief that the truth had finally been revealed. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. The emotional roller coaster has been intense, and the revelations just keep coming. I never imagined my life could take such a dramatic turn, but here we are. After my mom called to reveal Angelina's pregnancy was a result of an affair with Mike, I had a lot to think about. I felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and confusion. It was shocking to learn that all of Angelina's claims about infertility and her desperate push for surrogacy stemmed from a fear of pregnancy that she had never addressed with anyone. And to think she would lie and manipulate not just me, but our entire family, was infuriating. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on our childhood. I remembered the times when Angelina had seemed so perfect, so put together, while I was always the one who felt like the black sheep. It was almost like I had been living in a bubble, unaware of the emotional turmoil she had been hiding. I wondered how much of our relationship had been built on deception and comparison, and how much of her life had been a carefully curated facade. I decided to confront my parents about their complicity in this entire mess. I arranged a video call with them, wanting to ensure we could discuss this openly. When we finally connected, I could see the strain on their faces. My mom looked worn out, while my dad seemed more defensive than ever. "Why didn't you tell me about Angelina's fears? Why didn't you protect me from being used as a pawn in her game?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with emotion. My dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "We thought we were helping her. We believed she could overcome her fears with your support. We didn't see it as manipulation at the time. We just wanted to see her happy." My mom chimed in. "We thought if we encouraged her, she'd be able to confront her fears and maybe find a way to have a family in a more traditional sense. We never expected it to spiral out of control like this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You thought it was okay to coerce me into being a surrogate without discussing it with me first, just because you thought it would make her happy. They both fell silent, and I could feel the tension building. I continued, "This isn't just about Angelina's happiness, it's about my life and my choices." After a long pause, my mom finally spoke up. "I'm sorry, Sarah. We were trying to support both of you. We never wanted to put you in that position." It was frustrating. I could sense their guilt, but it didn't change the fact that they had failed to protect me. I ended the call feeling drained, more determined than ever to reclaim my own narrative. I realized that I needed to prioritize my own well-being. I booked another appointment with my therapist, hoping to unpack the emotional turmoil that had become my daily reality. In therapy, I began to explore not just the fallout from this situation, but also the patterns that had existed in my relationship with my sister and my parents. I wanted to understand how I could break free from the cycle of comparison and manipulation that had defined so much of my life. During one session, my therapist encouraged me to start focusing on myself, my needs, my dreams, and my happiness. "You've spent so much time being there for others, it's time to invest in yourself," she said. I felt a glimmer of hope, a spark that had been missing for too long. Around this time, I also decided to reach out to Tom. After all, he was caught in the middle of this whole debacle. We agreed to meet at a local cafe, and I was surprised by how relieved I felt to see him. He looked worn but somehow lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders now that the truth was out. "Thank you for reaching out," he said, settling into his seat. "I've been going through a lot, but I'm starting to feel like I can finally breathe again. I can't believe I was so blind." We talked for hours. He shared his feelings of betrayal and confusion regarding Angelina's deceit, and I opened up about my own journey through this chaos. It was cathartic to talk to someone who had experienced the fallout from Angelina's actions, but was also navigating his own healing process. Tom confessed he had been questioning his own choices. "I've always wanted a family, but I never thought I'd end up." We both agreed that Angelina had created a situation that hurt not just me but him as well. As we spoke, I could sense the camaraderie growing between us. We both felt like victims in Angelina's narrative, and sharing our stories helped us find common ground. A few days later, I received an unexpected text from Angelina. "Can we talk? I need to explain." My heart raced. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to move on with my life without the baggage of our past. But another part felt a strange pull to understand her perspective, to hear her side of the story now that everything had unfolded. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet. We chose a quiet park where we could sit away from the prying eyes of our family. When I arrived, I noticed how different she looked. Her demeanor was more subdued, and there was a vulnerability in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice shaky. "I know I've messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to talk." I took a deep breath and nodded. "Go on." She started to explain how deeply her fear of pregnancy had affected her life. "I've been running away from it for so long, and I thought I could trick myself into feeling differently. I thought if I got someone else to carry the baby, I could avoid my fears. I was so desperate for a family that I lost sight of everything else." As she spoke, I felt a mix of empathy and anger. It was hard to reconcile the sister I knew with the one sitting in front of me. "You put me in a terrible position, Angelina. You didn't just lie to me. You manipulated everyone around you. Why didn't you come to me with your fears instead of trying to control my life?" I was scared, she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't want to admit that I was afraid of being a mother. I didn't want to look weak in front of anyone, especially you. I thought I could manage it all by myself." I wanted to scream, to lash out at her for everything she had put me through. But instead I found myself wanting to understand. What now? You have this baby coming, and you're not even sure if you want it. What are you going to do? Angelina sighed heavily, wiping her tears. I don't know. I want to be a good mom, but I'm terrified. I don't want to pass on my fears to my child. I've already messed up so much, and now I have to figure out how to make this right. I could see the weight of her situation pressing down on her. Have you talked to Tom about this? She shook her head. Not yet. I know he deserves the truth, but I'm so afraid of how he'll react. I messed up. As we sat there, something shifted. I realized that despite everything, I wanted to support her, not as a surrogate, but as a sister who cared. Angelina, it's going to take time for you to figure this out, but you need to be honest with Tom. He deserves that, and so do you. You can't keep running from your fears. She nodded, her expression softening. You're right. I've been so wrapped up in my own world that I didn't think about how my actions affected you or anyone else. I'm sorry. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope for our relationship. We both had a lot of healing to do, but this moment felt like a step in the right direction. After our talk, I left the park feeling a mix of emotions, hopeful but cautious. I realized that while I couldn't change the past, I could still choose how to move forward. I began focusing on my own goals again, diving back into my career and reconnecting with friends. In the weeks that followed, I kept in touch with Tom and Angelina. Tom was making progress in processing his feelings about the situation and had even started seeing a therapist himself. He and Angelina were cautiously rebuilding their relationship. As for me, I've started looking into my own future. I'm contemplating taking a trip abroad next year, something I've always wanted to do but never prioritized. I've been exploring new hobbies like painting and hiking, which have brought me a sense of peace and joy. It's been a long journey, but I feel like I'm finally emerging from the shadows of my family's drama. I've learned the importance of boundaries, of standing up for myself. I may have lost some parts of my family along the way, but I've also found a deeper understanding of who I am and what I want. Life is still a work in progress, but I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next. Thank you all for your continued support. I'll keep you updated as I navigate this new chapter in my life.